We weren't all that far away from the target. You could see the lights of the harbour, and, I thought, we're going to do it. It's going to be all right. Mission accomplished, as it were. But then the boat hit something under the water. I don't know what it was. Thinking back, I suppose it was a rock, maybe, something like that. Anyway, the boat started sinking really fast.
The whole operation was supposed to take 16 hours, tops. We were in a dinghy, lightweight, inflatable, boards on the floor, you know the sort of thing. They're pretty fast, but not a lot of use in heavy seas. They're just not big enough, you see. Mind you, we weren't carrying much, 16 gallons of fuel and some food and some water. And we were in pretty high spirits when we set off, laughing and joking. It was 4 o'clock on an August morning. The 11th of August.
There was this young lad, must have been about 15, and he was in tears, asking his father to help him. But his father wasn't there. I said to him, you're going to have to save yourself. Your father isn't here. He can't help you. But he was weeping, and he said he couldn't swim and he didn't want to die. Didn't want to die here. Well, die there. It was awful. You can't imagine. He was begging for help, and I felt terrible, really terrible. But what could I do? Our boat was sinking. So I jumped. I just jumped into the water and started swimming towards the lights.
A whole day passed, and it were dark, and nobody was laughing anymore. Then some people at the front of the boat said they thought they could hear the boat breaking up, and everybody started panicking and shouting, "We've got to turn back, we've got to head back." The captain said he hadn't got enough fuel to go all the way back, so we just carry on towards our objective. So that's what we did.
Only I hadn't eaten for 3 days, and so I was weak, and I really didn't have the energy for swimming. And my clothes were weighing me down, pulling me down, and I was going under the water the whole time. And I thought, this is it. But somehow I got to the shore. I have no idea how I got there, but I did. I got there. I was unconscious for about 15 minutes, and everyone, all the other chaps, they thought I was dead. Until, I opened my eyes and said, I'm okay, I'm alive.
In the early morning after that first night, it were very quiet. We realised, of course, that the boat wasn't going to break up, which was good. But we also realised we were a long way off our target, and the fuel wasn't going to last forever. Then somebody noticed a boat behind us, and people were saying, "Hey, we've got to turn round and ask them for help." But our captain said he wasn't prepared to waste fuel chasing a boat going in the wrong direction, so we just continue towards our target. Then people really got mad, and they were saying, "Look, if he doesn't turn this bloody boat round, we're going to sink it." So I went to see the captain, and I said, ever the diplomat, "Look, if you don't turn round, there's going to be trouble." So he did.
I should tell you, it had been a bloody ordeal to get to the boat in the first place. We'd walked, there were about 20 of us. We'd walked all through the night along roads and through a forest. It was hard, really hard. And of course people were frightened. There were women and children with us, and they'd all heard stories, first-hand reports really, of rapes and murders and people being taken hostage and held for ransom. And at one point during the night we did run into a bunch of rather rough-looking fellows. And if we men hadn't outnumbered them, there's no telling what they might have done, what might have happened to us.
When the crew on the other ship saw us coming, they changed direction immediately, so we knew they weren't going to help us. So our captain just turned round and carried on towards our, objective. Well, we carried on for another maybe 30 minutes when the bloody engine stopped. Well, that was it. We were out of fuel.
We'd walked for 14 hours when we got to a river, which we had to cross. Now, we'd expected that, and a small inflatable boat had been left on the far bank for us, and so I swam across with another fellow and got it. We pumped it up, and we brought the women and children across one by one. It took an age, but there was no other way to do it. When the sun came up, we were quite close to the border, but that was when we were all caught. The whole group were arrested by the military police. We were held in this ancient prison. The guards were brutal. I mean, the way they spoke to us, but in the way they treated us, and especially the young girls who were with us. The guards, male guards these were, would insist on carrying out these full body searches of the girls, the young girls. It was awful. Barbaric.
Even though we had no fuel, the wind was pushing us in the right direction. And after about an hour, we saw an island. It was way, way in the distance, but it was an island. After about another half hour, we could make out houses and that on the shoreline. But we were getting a bit frightened because the wind was getting up and it was getting dark.
They kept us in the prison for 3 days, and then they released us with a paper ordering us to be out of the country within a month. So I headed straight for the capital. It seemed to be the best place to go. I wanted to go to Denmark, which is where my brother was, but getting there directly was nearly impossible. So I spent about a month looking for smugglers that would get me across the sea to where I thought I could take a train to Denmark. That was the plan, anyway.
That night was terrifying. The wind were blowing a gale and the waves were swamping the boat, and we thought we were going to turn over, capsize. All night we were bailing out the water using the empty fuel containers. All night. When day came, the weather calmed down a bit. When the sun came up, we couldn't see the island anymore.
The smugglers said it would take about 12 or 13 hours to get to Italy, and they also said that the boat we were going in was made to hold about 50 people. I couldn't believe it when I saw it. It was tiny. Maybe I've got 25 people on board at a push, and I saw that there were over 80 of us. I saw how they were packing people on, and I said, I'm not going, it's not safe. Now, most of the smugglers spoke Russian, but one of them spoke a bit of English, and when he heard what I'd said, he said he was going to kill me and throw my body in the water if I didn't get on and shut up. So I did. What else could I do?
We kept on heading towards the sun until the afternoon. Then someone saw a ship coming. We thought it might be the Italian rescue boat, but when it got nearer, we saw it was flying a Tunisian flag. Well, our captain, he said that we should ask them for some fuel and food and carry on towards our objective. So when they came alongside, that's what we did. But they just turned away without answering us. We'd got a Tunisian bloke on our boat. He couldn't swim, so he was wearing a life jacket. And when he saw the boat turn away, he screamed at them to stop, but they just ignored him. So he jumped in and started going after them as best he could. But they didn't pick him up. And after a while, he was too far away from us to get back. We couldn't reach him. So we just watched him until, after a while, he disappeared.
Of course, it didn't take 12 hours. We were on that bloody boat the best part of 3 nights and 2 days. About halfway through the first night, somewhere, the Russian-speaking smugglers all left the ship. I suppose another boat must have come alongside, but, well, they disappeared, and, for 2 hours or something, nobody was steering the boat. Unbelievable. But luckily there was this Kurdish fellow on board, and he knew how to captain a boat, so he took over the controls. But the weather was awful, and the waves were huge, and the boat was so overloaded. I mean, it was so low in the water that we were sure it was going to sink, and we thought, that's it. That's the end of it.
We carried on towards the sun, drifting for, maybe another 3 hours. And we saw another ship coming towards us. And, I'll swear, wonders will never cease. The Tunisian was on board. It were a French fishing boat. They'd seen him drifting by and had rescued him. Well, the French captain, he said he'd give us some food and fuel and water and put us in the direction for Italy. But we said, no, we've got to be rescued. So he radioed the Italian rescue ship and gave them our position. Well, we were pretty close to him then, and there was a Nigerian on our boat, and he leapt onto the French boat. Well, the French captain went bloody mad. He said, no, I can't take you. You'll get me in trouble. And he sailed away with the Tunisian and Nigerian.
I started texting my family, especially my mother, to say my last goodbyes. But there was no signal. So I got a piece of paper and I wrote on that, so that my family would have my last words and know that my last thoughts were of them. And then amazingly, we saw the lights of the harbour in the distance, and we all laughed, because we were heading towards them and we were going to make it. Then, as I said before, that was when the boat hit the rock.
So we drifted on for another night, and by the morning, people had started drinking seawater and making themselves sick, and some had started to say their final prayers. So we turned the boat towards the sun and drifted on. After a while, we saw a lot of ships in the distance, so we started waving at them. And then we took our T-shirts off and waved them. Then one big boat got near to us, and he said he couldn't help us, but the Italian rescue boat wasn't far away, and the next boat would help us. And that's what happened. He gave us bread and water and put his boat in a position to protect us from the waves. I arrived in Lampedusa on August the 14th, 2008.
When I came to on the beach, I just sat still for about half an hour before I could stand up. And when I did, there were 5 or 6 dead bodies lying beside me. One of them was the little lad who'd been crying for his father and who'd asked me for help, and who was now dead because his father was in Afghanistan and I was too weak to help him. There he was, 15 years of age, lying dead on an Italian beach in the middle of the night. I still have nightmares about it.
You see, my ambition in coming to Europe was to help my family, so they didn't have to suffer like I have. To help my mother and father, because they have suffered a lot, too much. And sometimes I'm ashamed, because I haven't helped them. I can't help them.
I'm 26. You can't call me an old man, but in my life, I've confronted death so many times that I'm not frightened now. I'm not scared at all.